Hello, hello, adventurers, and welcome back to the Dragon's Lair. Today, we will be discussing one of my favorite characters from this series, probably my favorite character from this series, Franklin. So, let's jump right into it, shall we? Before we do that, I do want to mention that, unfortunately, Chill had something going on, so he's not here today. So, it is just me, so if you notice some cuts, that's what it is. Chill isn't here, so I'm cutting out some of the lag time between different sections. Starting out with strength. There's not a whole lot to go off of here, aside from the general fighting that happens and breaking of windows. I would say something like controlling chops requires a little bit of strength, but I mean, there's not really a whole lot of controlling chops needs done, if that makes sense. Franklin never really needs to control chops, hardly at all. So, that's kind of that. Overall, for the score, I would say probably somewhere around 10 to 12, just because he doesn't use it, and what little he does, he's not weak, but it's not really the most important score for him. So to reiterate, 10 to 12 for the score. Maybe 14 by the end of it. I could see that. But not negative, for sure, but not super great. Dexterity. So this suits him a little more. Right off the bat, we see him sneaking into Michael's house. So we see his stealth score pretty early on. From there, I would also argue that his special ability, which is to slow down time during while driving, that would use a little bit of dexterity as well, because it would take fast reaction times and quick movement to be able to control a car going 150 plus miles an hour, or however fast. I don't know exactly how fast they go, but it speeds it up and slows down time in the process, and when you come out of it, you're going super fast. So things like that. Aside from that, there is a little bit of like pickpocketing or like petty thievery, I'll say, going on when we first meet him. So it's just kind of things like that, where he can do some of those things, but then he's also trying to move on to bigger and better things as well. So for dexterity, I would argue that his score is a little higher, probably somewhere around 16 to 18. Into Constitution. So there's not really a whole lot I have to go off of here for Constitution. It's mainly just compared to other people in the game. So because of that, Franklin isn't like the tankiest of people, but I would say he'd have the capability to if he wanted to. So you could go somewhere around 12, maybe 14, just because he could tank if he really wanted to or needed to, but he doesn't usually. That's what Trevor's for. Intelligence. So I don't know if Franklin is the most intelligent person, and I say that meaning I don't know comparatively how much he knows. So, like, we start off with Franklin being just a common criminal around his neighborhood, and, you know, there's not really a whole lot more to go off of there. He just kind of does some basic things. Moving on. So, eventually, though, he does come into contact with Michael. And Michael is the one that teaches him to move on to bigger and better, shall we say, pastures? Grass is always greener on the other side, or something like that. I don't know. Michael teaches him to set his sights a little higher, I'll say. So, in the beginning, I would say Franklin isn't the most knowledgeable when it comes to the type of crime that he should be doing, and then by the end of it, Michael probably raises that up a little bit. So, I would say maybe 12 or so to begin, and then by the end of it, probably somewhere around 16, give or take. Into wisdom. Honestly, I think this is where Franklin kind of excels. He has the wisdom and the foresight to know that he doesn't want to keep doing this petty thievery for the rest of his life, kind of like what Lamar was, I guess, intending to do. So he had the wisdom to try to distance himself from Lamar and, more accurately, Simeon. So he was trying to get out of that. And then Michael comes along, and Franklin has the wisdom or the foresight to pay attention to Michael and listen to what he has to say and learn from him to move on to better things. So it's just kind of something like that, where he realizes that this isn't necessarily the path he wants to go down, and then when another path opens up, he has the wisdom to pay attention to the person that knows more and to switch paths. So because of that, I would argue his wisdom score would probably be around 16 to 18. Into charisma. This is probably Franklin's main stat. When we first, well, not when we first meet him, but pretty soon after, when we introduce a character named Stretch, Franklin is just going off with jokes and a few insults here and there, just kind of like what most guys would consider the friendly, like, banter, I'll say. So, you know, things like that. Now, Stretch didn't necessarily consider it that. Stretch got pretty upset. But it's something like that, to where he was just going off. Pair that with a general likability that Franklin seems to have. There aren't really any characters that outright hate Franklin, aside from, theoretically, the other gangs that are out there. So it's just something like that, where he's generally likable and he's pretty witty on his feet, I'll say. So for the charisma score, I would probably go with something like 18 to 20. Alright, for the straightforward build, you're going to go human, the normal type, because Franklin is pretty good at all of the different scores. As for the class, you're going to go ranger until level 11. Specifically, we're going to go Beastmaster. Of course, you're going to want to do archery for the fighting style, because of guns. For the favored enemies, go with humanoids and beasts, because there aren't any other types of enemies out there, really, in the actual game, aside from people, and then theoretically you could go hunting, but no one really ever does that. It's just kind of there. But those are the only things in D&D that would be in the game as well. As for the favored terrain, if your DM will let you, go cities. But that's not an actual terrain type in D&D that I had access to. Maybe it is and I don't know about it. You might have to homebrew something there. That would make sense with GTA. That being said, if you can't, you're going to want to go desert, coast, and mountains for your terrain types. Just those are the different terrain types that are in GTA 5 that you have access to in D&D mostly. After that, you're going to want to go rogue for 9 levels, specifically thief. This just kind of gives you a little bit of extra, shall we say, movement and thievery that you can do. There's not a really good way to put it, but, you know. Oh, we went level 11 in Ranger, specifically Beastmaster, for Chops, because at that point Chops gets magical attacks and things like that to make him just a little bit better. Alright, and as for the conceptual build, what you're going to want to do, you're going to want to go, Changeling could make sense because he's shifting who he is, depending on which group he's with, whether he's with Michael and Trevor, he's one style of person, and when he's back with Lamar, he's kind of back to his old self. That's too deep for this channel. So I would probably go Furbolg, because those guys are cool, and they kind of fit Franklin's personality and build a little bit, because Franklin's more laid back, calm, cool, and collected, and then they're taller and a little bit bigger through the frame here. So something like that. As for the class, you're going to want to go Bard, specifically College of Lore for the cutting words. You know, that's really all I've got there, because as I was hinting to earlier with the jokes and the insults and stuff, cutting words and things like that are going to be your main thing as a bard with Franklin. And inspiration is always nice to have as well. But that is all I have for you fine adventurers today, so be on the lookout for my next video, which will be on Lamar. If you can't possibly wait until then, feel free to come check out my Discord or come hang out on Twitch. Thank you so much for watching. Other than that, I will catch you all later.